There are places on the planet where time stands still. Permafrost, underwater ruins, forgotten caves, abandoned temples. We think it's just the past. But what if it's a pause? What if something from the past is still alive? Science answers millions of questions, but these discoveries are like holes in reality. What if we've already found proof that the history of humanity isn't the whole story? Hello, my friend. Welcome to the Kurtop channel. The first mammoth that could come back. The permafrost of Yakutia preserved the body of a mammoth as if it had just been taken out of a refrigerator. Yucca is not just a mummified corpse. Its brain, soft tissues, glands, and most importantly, living cell nuclei have been preserved. Scientists have already conducted the first experiments. They implanted the nuclei into a mouse cell, and it showed signs of activity. There hasn't been any cell division yet, but this is just the beginning. Cloning is being seriously discussed. And if the technology succeeds, the mammoth could become the first species to return from extinction. It sounds like science fiction, but it's no longer fiction. This is a functioning laboratory. A pyramid that sank before recorded history. Near Yonaguni Island, at a depth of 30 meters on the ocean floor, lies a stone pyramid. Even steps, terraces, arches, and openings. Everything looks as if this is a building, not random rocks. The structure is about 10,000 years old. That means it was built even before the Sumerians, Egyptians, and the first cities. Scientists are still debating. Some are convinced that this is nature's work. Others believe Yonaguni is proof of a still unrecognized civilization. If they are right, this could completely change our understanding of when and how human history began. What if this is not just a mistaken trace of history, but a trace of some civilization? What if beneath this ocean lies a history we don't know? The road is ash. Southern Italy. During the construction of a gas pipeline, a routine job, the excavator hits something strange. Under a thin layer of volcanic ash, there are footprints of bare feet, human, and nearby, hoof prints. Archaeologists rush to the site and realize they are looking at a scene of an ancient escape. People, women, children, livestock, all were leaving their homes in a hurry. But this is not Pompeii. It's not the year 79 AD. These tracks are 1,800 years older. Around 1995 BC, the time of the so-called Avellino eruption, one of the most devastating disasters of the Bronze Age. Before this, it was believed that almost nothing was known about it. Now we can literally see the route of the people who tried to escape. Their final choice is captured in the hardened ash. Amazingly, centuries later, people settled in the same place again. Archaeologists found remains of settlements dating back to 1,200 and 900 BC and even Roman structures. The cycle repeats itself. First comes the eruption, then the return. It's as if the land itself won't let us forget. This isn't just a story of disaster. It's about repeating mistakes, about the stubbornness of human hope, about memory which, like ash, still remains underfoot, life beyond the arena. When we think of gladiators, a vivid image of battles in the arena immediately comes to mind, where blood, death, and glory merge into one sinister spectacle. However, this is only a small part of what these fighters did. In reality, their lives were much more complicated and diverse. Besides training and fighting, gladiators served in a variety of roles, from bodyguards to mercenaries and even tax collectors. And of course, there were special privileges as well. After all, free gladiators became real stars of Rome. They were respected and valued for their strength, courage, and discipline. And many of them became heroes for the citizens, bringing them glory. They immortalized the traditions of the brutal arena. But there is another side to their lives. Many gladiators used their popularity to find positions with influential families. They were hired as bodyguards, and sometimes they even rose to the level of political figures, managing tax collection. Their lives were not just a struggle for survival, but also a game with power and wealth. And so, year after year, the Greeks and Romans began to realize more and more that a true gladiator could be not just a warrior, but someone who knows how to survive and succeed despite all the dangers, a mineral that no longer exists. This stone weighs only 1.6 carats, but its price is literally impossible to estimate. Kyathowite is the rarest mineral on Earth. It was discovered by chance in Myanmar at an ordinary market. Scientists found out that its composition and crystal lattice are not found anywhere else in nature. In fact, never before or since. The color is amber brown. The structure is like that of an alien object. Under the microscope, there are hollow tubes inside, formed by pressure and time. Today, Kyathowite is kept in a museum in Los Angeles. This is not just a stone, it's a mistake of nature, and possibly a trace of an ancient geological event that science hasn't even guessed at yet. But what if this mineral is not just a coincidence of nature, but something deeper? What if its composition hides answers to questions we haven't even asked yet? When was the Saharan Ocean? Now it seems lifeless. Endless sand, sun-scorched rocks, rare caravans. But once, millions of years ago, the Sahara was completely different. It was an ocean. The Tethys Ocean, vast and warm, was inhabited by ancient creatures: ammonites, sea urchins, corals, giant reptiles. All of this lived where today only lizards struggle to survive. Geologists have found traces of deltas, riverbeds, and shorelines. Everything points to the fact that water once splashed here, but the ocean disappeared, and a new story began in its place. Hundreds of thousands of years later, people settled on this land. Some of the most ancient people whose name still echoes through the sands, the Berbers, or, as they call themselves, the Amazigh, descendants of those who survived the changing climate, the disappearance of rivers, the drying up of lakes. They stayed when others left. Their rock paintings in Tassili N'Ajjer, a true library of prehistoric consciousness, people hunting with bows, celebrations, scenes of love and war, even images of beings with rounded helmets, as if from another reality. Some believe it's an allegory. Others see it as proof of contact with another intelligence. But the essence is the same. Before the Sahara came alive, the Berbers already knew how to share their stories. They knew where to find water and how to survive scorching days and freezing nights. They ruled Numidia, traded with Rome, fought with Egypt, and then they disappeared from the map, but not from the land. The Arab conquest forced them from cities to the desert and mountains, but their culture endured. Today, the Berber language is still spoken in remote villages, and a memory thousands of years old lives on. And in the desert itself, traces of a much more ancient past remain. Stone mushrooms. At first glance, they're just rocks, but if you look closely, their shape is astonishing. A massive cap of hard stone rests on a thin, eroded stem. These formations are the result of differential erosion. The wind, carrying sand, polishes the soft rocks for years, leaving the hard ones standing. Each of these mushrooms is like a marker of time, temporary but proud. Their stems gradually become thinner, and one day the cap will collapse. They live for hundreds of thousands of years, but they are still doomed, just like the ocean, just like civilization. And only memory in the stones, in the pollen, in the sand outlives everything. Are there any other traces left of this ancient civilization? And what can they tell us about the past, which we still do not understand? A history not found in textbooks. Not so long ago, archaeologists found evidence that in ancient Troy, long before the Iliad was written, people were already drinking wine. This is not just a theory or a guess, but real chemical evidence that confirmed that even ordinary people in the territory of Troy not only drank wine, but also used it in their daily lives. For researchers, this was a sensation because in ancient times, usually only the elite could afford the luxury of drinking wine. But in Troy, it was available to every level of society. Studies have shown that the cult of wine was so important to the inhabitants of Troy that the vessels in which it was drunk were found throughout the city, from wealthy palaces to simple residential quarters. But what's even more interesting is that the fermentation method used in Troy was so unique that it resembled those of more complex and advanced civilizations of that time. And now, thanks to these studies, we can confidently say Troy was not just a legend, it was real, and its culture was much more complex and progressive than we could have imagined. Icy ruins under the snow. We're used to thinking of the Arctic as nothing but an icy emptiness, lifeless, barren, devoid of any traces of civilization. But what if that's not the case? What if beneath the thick glaciers, there are not just traces of long-lost peoples, but entire lost cities? Satellite research in recent years has led to the discovery of anomalous shapes beneath the icy crust, which may indicate ancient ruins hidden deep in the far north. According to some scientists, these cities may be much older than the earliest known civilizations: Mesopotamia, Egypt, and ancient India. All these peoples might have simply been a continuation of something greater and more mysterious than we can imagine. How is that possible? How could it happen that such cities are hidden under kilometers-thick layers of ice? Today, these anomalies remain hypothetical, but each new study only deepens the mystery. Satellite images taken in the most remote corners of the planet show strange shapes and lines that resemble the structure of buildings, streets, or even entire cities. Are these glaciers not just barriers, but burial grounds of ancient civilizations? Ice caps that conceal not only climate changes, but also forgotten epics of humanity? Amazingly, it's possible that these cities fell victim to global catastrophes that preceded the ice ages. After all, is there anything older than what is preserved in eternal ice? This question concerns scientists now more than ever, and perhaps if we unravel the mystery hidden beneath centuries-old ice, we will reconsider not only the history of our civilizations, but also our very understanding of how our world developed. A refuge in the jungle? Imagine a group of people renting a part of the Amazon for 1,000 years, including not only the land, but also the airspace and even the natural resources. This is not a movie plot, but the real story of the Kailasa Nation, a self-proclaimed state created by a fugitive guru accused of abductions and abuse. He proclaimed himself the pontiff of Hinduism and fled from India, declaring a new island as his sovereign territory. In 2024, his followers began making agreements with tribes in Bolivia, promising help and money. One of the Boer communities signed a 25-year agreement, but later it turned out that the document stated a lease term of 1,000 years. When this came to light, an international scandal broke out. The Bolivian authorities arrested the participants, annulled all agreements, and expelled the instigators. But a troubling thought remained. If someone can come with money and try to lease the Amazon, who will be next? This story isn't about cultists. It's about how the lure of resources can lead to the loss of an entire territory. They froze and survived death. Northern Yakutia is one of the few regions on the planet where the past hasn't been destroyed, but literally preserved. Permafrost doesn't let bodies decompose. It preserves them as if death simply put life on pause. Such was the 2018 discovery, a foal that died about 42,000 years ago. All its internal organs were preserved: skin, muscles, even blood. Real blood, clotted in the vessels, but after thawing, it became liquid again. It instantly became a global sensation. Tests showed that the animal lived in the boreal steppes, which have long since disappeared. In essence, it became a portal to a past ecosystem. Another case is a woolly rhinoceros found in Colima, about 47,000 years old. The stomach was preserved, and inside there was plant pollen, wormwood, grasses, wild herbs. Even after thousands of years, it's possible to determine what it ate and what the surrounding landscape looked like. These are not just remains, this is ancient flora, preserved inside the animal's body. And in 2018, the head of a Pleistocene wolf was found. Even the entire brain was preserved. This happens extremely rarely, especially after tens of thousands of years. Researchers were able to study its structure. The age is about 1.5 years. The animal had not yet reached maturity. All these findings have one thing in common. They are more alive than they should be. This is not just archaeology, it's almost biology. And in this sense, Yakutia is a unique laboratory where time seems reluctant to move on. Entrance to the underground ecosystem. In central Vietnam, there is a place that even science has not yet reached. Son Dung Cave is the largest on Earth. It is more than 6 kilometers long, with a volume of 38 million cubic meters. To understand the scale, a whole block of skyscrapers could easily fit inside. But the main thing is not its size. The main thing is that inside this cave lives a separate ecosystem. It has its own river, lakes, jungles, and stalactites that are tens of meters long. Plants, insects, microorganisms. Many of them may be unknown to science. No light penetrates there, and it has its own air. Humidity, temperature, pressure, everything is enclosed inside. It's as if the planet decided to create its own reserve outside of history. And what's interesting is that we still don't know where this cave ends. The final point hasn't been explored. Perhaps further on, there's another chamber, another biospheric bubble, or even a completely separate evolutionary path that developed parallel to ours. A city that shouldn't exist. In the south of modern Iraq, among the sun-scorched land, lie the ruins of Eridu. Once, canals ran here, craftsmen worked, and the fields were irrigated according to a precisely calculated system. Recent studies have shown Eridu is not just an ancient city. This is possibly the very first city on Earth. According to satellite data, archaeologists have found more than 4,000 canals and about 700 farms, arranged in a strictly organized pattern. Canals up to 9 kilometers long, a branched irrigation network, infrastructure that scattered tribes could not have built. This required engineers, workers, a management system. And all of this existed thousands of years before the Sumerians, Egyptians, and Akkadians appeared. The strangest thing is the region is Acacia.
Что самое странное, регион...
It's abandoned, which is why this entire ancient system has been preserved almost untouched. It's as if our modern city were buried under ash and someone found it completely intact 6,000 years later. Eridu is mentioned in the Sumerian king list as the first city to which kingship was given from the heavens. When myth coincides with geodesy, it gets a little unsettling. The gates through which death passed. On the southwestern coast of Sicily, archaeologists uncovered not just ruins, but an entire forgotten fragment of an ancient city. 3-meter-high walls, gates, cemeteries, workshops, all of this belonged to the ancient Greek city of Selinunte. Recently, the northern gates were discovered, through which processions passed to the necropolises. They led to 5 burial sites covering 5,000 square meters, ranging from simple graves to rich tombs. And all of this stood on the most vulnerable border of the city. Apparently, ritual and vulnerability were connected. According to Diodorus Siculus, it was from here that the Carthaginian troops broke into the city. The battle lasted for 10 days, and 16,000 defenders of Selinunte were killed. The battlefield is right here, under our feet, and nearby is the cemetery where they were possibly buried. It's amazing how much has been preserved: ovens, fragments of pottery, remains of craft workshops, and wine storage facilities. By the scale and density of the finds, it becomes clear the city lived, traded, ritualized death, and suffered. And now, 2,500 years later, it is slowly coming back to the surface. Under the temple where it all began, Jerusalem, the Church of the Holy Sepulchre, one of the most revered places in the Christian world. It is believed that this is where Jesus was buried. But for a long time, archaeologists debated how much this actually matches the biblical description. Everything changed when scientists from the University of Rome dug beneath the church floor. They didn't discover a tomb or artifact, but found remains of an ancient garden. Layers of soil between the stone walls, traces of terraces and cultural layers, and most importantly, pollen from grapevines and olive trees. All of this matches the text from the Gospel of John. At the place where he was crucified, there was a garden. If the radiocarbon analysis confirms the age of the find, it will be the first direct archaeological confirmation of a New Testament text. Exactly, not theological, not symbolic, but physical. In addition, during the excavation, they found an ancient marble altar that disappeared during a fire in the 19th century. It had been in the church all this time, just turned toward the wall. On the front side, there was tourist graffiti, and on the back, a unique mosaic made with a technique known only to Vatican masters. No sensationalism, no mysticism, just facts. But sometimes those facts speak louder than any legend. A secret known to the CIA. In 2002, declassified CIA documents were made public. One of them was simply called the Report on Noah's Ark. It mentions a strange object on the slope of Mount Ararat. The formation looks like the hull of a giant ship. Rumors about this place had been circulating since the mid-20th century. But here's what's strange. The CIA conducted aerial reconnaissance, and then satellites were involved, all for the sake of this anomaly. According to the official version, nothing special was found in the images, but dozens of requests to publish the footage, especially from 1974, were denied. Why hide the images if there's nothing on them? Later, researchers collected soil samples from this place. They found marine organisms in them. But Mount Ararat is at an altitude of 4,420 meters. Does this mean that water really was here? The very same water from the biblical flood, It might seem like just a coincidence, but there are just too many such coincidences. For too long, people have tried to avoid this place. A storm revealed an ancient ritual. In the spring, after a storm, a coastal cliff collapsed on the shore of the Baltic Sea. The chunk of clay that broke off was hiding something inside that no one would have found without nature's help. It lay underground for almost 3,000 years and turned out to be in perfect condition. It is 24 centimeters long and decorated with an ornament, stars, crescents, symbols resembling signs of the sun and moon. According to archaeologists, the weapon had ritual significance. It may have been used in rituals related to the cult of the sun, and the ornaments correspond to the astral symbolism of the Bronze Age. The place where it was found is just a beach that gave no hint of what was there, just clay, just a crumbling shore. And here it is, the object that lay in darkness for 3,000 years, coming into the light for just a few seconds before it could have been carried away by the water. Sometimes archaeology isn't just about excavations. It's when the earth itself chooses the moment to show you something important. The tomb that someone tried to steal. Summer 2023, Abkhazia. Markul Hill Fort. An ordinary plot of land and a destroyed ancient crypt. It was broken into by looters. The robbers tried to take the bronze sigilla, but they were caught on the spot. The landowner took the artifact away and called the archaeologists. What they discovered amazed even the most experienced specialists. The crypt from the 3rd century BC turned out to be a real golden tomb. 70 items made of pure gold, plaques, beads, elements of clothing and jewelry, rosettes, flowers, lunulae, twisted threads, and foil. The craftsmanship is exceptionally fine, with jeweler-like precision. Some gold resembled Scythian Sarmatian style, while other elements displayed ancient influences. This may be the work of local craftsmen at the crossroads of cultures and trade. Archaeologists even found the remains of sacrificial animals, traces of a ritual important for the burial of a noble person. Judging by the artifacts, bones, glass beads, and bronze bracelets, the buried person was not just wealthy. He was a member of the elite, possibly even a priest or a chief. The irony is that the crypt was destroyed not by time or nature, but by people, just like those who once built it. Thou shalt not steal, but they stole. In the quiet English village of Little Stipping, someone broke into the church at night. They stole several old Victorian-era frescoes, including the most ironic of all, a plaque with the 10 Commandments. Among them, of course, was the inscription, "Thou shalt not steal." The church warden, 80-year-old Beezus Harwood, could only shrug his shoulders. The thieves seemed interested in studying the commandments, but apparently didn't finish. They stole the fresco, an old painting of Moses, and even a regular extension cord. Maybe it was just within reach, or maybe it was also considered a relic. The police started an investigation, but now the whole story seems like a joke, when reality makes the plot better than any script. King or demon? A strange artifact is kept in the Museum of Knightly Arms at the Lyceum. It was clearly not made for battle. It has horns, a toothy grin, and a bristly chin. It doesn't look like a warrior's helmet, but rather a jester's mask. But according to the documents, this helmet belonged to Henry VIII. Yes, that's right. The very same Henry VIII, one of the most powerful and controversial monarchs of England. The helmet was part of a suit of armor gifted by Emperor Maximilian I in honor of their military alliance. It was crafted by the famous armorer Susenhofer. The engraving was done by a jeweler from Augsburg, so there's nothing frivolous about it. It was an official gift, custom made with the highest level of craftsmanship. Why would the king want such a face? There are many theories, from a theatrical ceremonial image to esoteric symbolism. Maybe it's an allegory, power transforming into a demon, or maybe it's just a peculiar sense of humor. Interestingly, the whole set of armor vanished, leaving only this helmet. It may have survived for centuries due to its unusual and intimidating look. A monster that couldn't withstand change. In Miocene Amazonia, 8 million years ago, there was a predator swimming around that was closer in scale to a dinosaur than to modern reptiles, Purosaurus, a giant crocodile, 15 to 16 meters long. That's almost 2 saltwater crocodiles stacked on top of each other. It weighed 10 tons. The bite force was 11 tons per square inch. That's almost 3 times more than a Tyrannosaurus. It could crush the shell of a turtle the size of a Volkswagen. But Purosaurus didn't hunt near the shore like modern crocodiles. It would leap vertically out of the water like an orca and grab its prey, giant fish, snakes, and even mammals. It was a killing machine in the water. Other crocodiles shared its habitat too. For example, Murasuchus with its duck bill. It seems the ecosystem was so rich that even monsters found a place to coexist. But it all ended when the geography changed. The Isthmus of Panama cut off the ocean passage. The rivers of the Amazon became shallow and the climate grew drier. And Purosaurus disappeared, along with everything it fed on. Today, its relatives are dwarf caimans. They survived, but the giant did not. Because strength means nothing if the world around you disappears. We're missing something. We find mummies whose blood still flows after 40,000 years. Stone terraces built before the rise of civilization. Minerals that occur only once. Cities, canals, helmets, artifacts. All of this was buried in the ground. It gathered dust in museums or lay hidden underwater. Some of them we can't explain. Others we explain, but with too much confidence. The extraordinary is close by. Sometimes a storm brings it out. Sometimes the frost. Sometimes it's just by chance. But each such fragment seems to repeat the same question. What if everything wasn't the way we think it was? What if history is not a straight line, but a jagged trail in the sand, part of which has already been washed away? We search for answers, but maybe it's time to learn to notice the questions. Thank you for watching. Goodbye, everyone. Subtitles.